Sure. Perhaps I'll answer through 2 points. I'll answer the question to Volodymyr first. I think we need to get our facts right. When you look at support for Ukraine throughout this war, Europe stands, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said earlier, at about 134 billion euros, more or less. The United States, roughly around 114 billion. I look around this table and I see NB8, so 5 Nordic countries and 3 Baltic states. We're actually at 26 billion euros, roughly speaking. So that's about a fifth of what Europe has supported. So yes, to a certain extent in the future, we're going to have to take more responsibility, but to get bogged down in who has given more, I think is the wrong tack. The second point I have to make, it's not only about the material support, it's also about having skin in the game or having some kind of a plan. I think Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre put it quite well earlier when he said that we Europeans can't complain our way to the negotiating table. And my worry is that in the past 2 weeks, when we've seen a shift in the transatlantic partnership, and you'll know that I'm an avid transatlanticist, we have to wake up to a new reality. And then the question is, how do we get skin in the game? How do we get involved? I think a good start is what President Costa has done, is to call a European Council, because right now European diplomacy is rather cacophonic. It's all over the place. That's why I have, together with some colleagues, proposed that we sit down and think about a plan. And in my mind, that plan or sketch goes in 3 phases. The first phase is the pre-negotiation. That's where we are right now. This is when we have to think really hard how we put more pressure on Russia and basically how we support Volodymyr and Ukraine and what kind of security arrangements we have. And if I may, just as a side note, I'm getting a little bit frustrated about this debate on boots on the ground, because that sort of misses the whole point. That is that the strongest boots on the ground in the world right now are with Ukraine. They have the land forces. Then it's a question about which phase and how Europe will come to support Ukraine. In the air, in the sea, with reconnaissance, with intelligence, etc., etc. The second phase of the plan is when the ceasefire begins. And that's actually quite crucial, because that's when you start looking at the modalities and the agenda of the actual negotiations. And that's when you start looking at confidence-building measures. And then the third phase is the peace process. And that's when you start talking about the big issues of territory, and that's when you start talking basically about recompensation, about justice, which President Zelensky was talking about earlier. So what I'm trying to say is that I think we in Europe, we need to get our act together. And in order to get an act together, you have to have a plan to the Americans, because if you don't have a plan to the Americans, you're not going to get involved in negotiations. And right now the negotiations are happening above our heads without any kind of a plan and strategy. That's why I think this meeting has been extremely important, and that's why I think that the next 2 weeks are crucial also about the future of European security.